I am Ernest Bessig, Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Northern California. On behalf of that organization, we are going to show you a film you may already have seen. It was called Operation Abolition and was a film spliced together from television newsreel footage subpoenaed by the House Committee on Un-American Activities following their visit to San Francisco in May 1960. The final film, produced and sold by Washington, D.C. Film Company, has been made part of its official record by the committee. This is the committee's report, under date of October 7, 1960, entitled "The Communist-Led Riots Against the House Committee on Un-American Activities in San Francisco, May 12 to 14, 1960. Now, the American Civil Liberties Union, a large number of reliable eyewitnesses, including ministers, educators, attorneys, newspapermen, and broadcasters, disagree with that title, Communist-Led Riots. Yes, there were demonstrations against the committee, some newspaper editorials against the committee's tactics. In fact, fairly widespread questioning of the committee from persons representing many shades in the broad spectrum of American political opinion. No doubt some communists, both foreign and domestic variety, are against this committee. But we point out, and we will prove with their own film, that persons who demonstrate against the committee are not thereby communists or communist dupes. If you're to be called a communist every time you stand up for basic American rights and freedoms, what's likely to happen? Will you be silent? And if so, is this what the House Committee on Un-American Activities is really after? A silent, submissive, unprotesting America? If not, then why the falsifications in their own film? In a moment, you will see that film, known as Operation Abolition, but you will hear a corrected description of the events. The evidence offered by the committee to prove that the San Francisco demonstrations were communist manipulated is this film. But mark this well. The evidence lies not in the pictures you see, but in the words spoken by the Operation Abolition narrator. Some of the effect has been achieved also by skillful editing and by omission of certain newsreel sequences. But we're going to play fair, the American way. We don't think you answer lies and propaganda with more propaganda. We think that if we show you the original film with the same sequences in it, in the same positions, but tell you in straight, simple facts on which day each sequence was made, you'll see for yourself some of the things that occurred in San Francisco. In brief, what occurred was this. A 3-day hearing of the House Committee on Un-American Activities at the City Hall in San Francisco, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, May 12, 13, and 14, 1960. Students expressed their protest against the committee's tactics on all 3 days. On Friday afternoon, the second day, the police turned fire hoses on the demonstrators. Those are the simple facts. The committee would have you believe that everything that occurred was calculated to lead up to that Friday afternoon disturbance, and they tried to prove it by rearranging the scenes to fit that false assertion. One of the dozens of examples of telling you one thing and showing you quite another is this statement in the film by Chairman Walter.
The scenes which you will be viewing were taken by newsreel photographers during hearings of the Committee on Un-American Activities in San Francisco, California on May the 12th, 13th, and 14th, 1960. During the next few minutes, you will see revealed the long-time classic communist tactic in which a relatively few well-trained, hardcore communist agents are able to incite and use non-communist sympathizers to perform the dirty work of the Communist Party.
That, as you will see, is a totally unsupported propaganda statement, which is why the American Civil Liberties Union of Northern California has, in the interests of setting the record straight, called its version of the film Operation Correction. These films were made outside the San Francisco City Hall on Thursday, the day before the police hosing. The students are exercising the American right to picket peacefully, a right guaranteed them and a right clearly recognized by the San Francisco Police Department. This group engaged in peaceful and orderly picketing from Thursday morning through Saturday without incident. Members of the Students for Civil Liberties of the University of California, joined by students from San Francisco State College and other schools, are present. None of the organizers of this group is either a known or alleged communist. The Operation Abolition narration states that these students were activated by trained agitators and propagandists months before the scheduled hearings. A neat trick, considering that the hearings were announced only 16 days in advance. Here we have Congressman Willis giving a reporter the committee's explanation of why the hearings were being held.
With respect to the general operation of the communist conspiracy, wherever it may lead. It's a mandate. That law has been on the books for probably over 20 years. We receive our appropriations and our audit every year to maintain this general surveillance of the communist operations with the view of amending, improving, correcting laws having to do with our internal security, the Internal Security Act of 1950, Foreign Agents Registration Act, the Smith Act, and so on. This is part and parcel of our general studies of the machinations of the communist conspiracy.
The committee hearings had been announced as public hearings, meaning that any citizen might go and see what his elected representatives to Congress were doing. One group of students was at this moment inside the City Hall, waiting to get into that hearing. In order to show you how the committee has falsified the facts by stringing scenes together without regard to the true sequence of events, from time to time, we're going to supply subtitles to indicate when the scenes were actually taken. But now, let's listen to the original narration.
Leaders who had an active part in the San Francisco abolition campaign and the protest demonstrations were Harry Bridges, whom you see here being escorted out of City Hall by police officials moments before the rioting broke out.
The truth is that Bridges was having lunch when the disturbance occurred and did not arrive at the City Hall until the hosing was over and order had been restored. FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover has reported the correct time of Bridges' arrival, and Congressman Walter finally admitted, quote, that the commentary is in error in stating that Bridges was escorted from City Hall before the rioting broke out, end quote. And order had certainly been restored when this scene was filmed, because this took place Saturday, the day after the fire hosing. Here's Archie Brown, a subpoenaed witness, described as playing a major role in inciting the demonstrations. He's doing no inciting here because one of these scenes took place on Friday and one on Saturday, both after the fire hose incident. The committee would have you think that the students are guilty of associating with Archie Brown simply because they were also at City Hall. In the present sequence, Brown is exercising his legal rights in distributing leaflets. This is Merle Brodsky, another subpoenaed witness, described as participating in the chanting and singing demonstrations immediately outside the hearing room. Brodsky was acting completely on his own. When he tried to get cooperation from student monitors of the picket lines, he got a flat turn down. Here is Douglas Wachter. The committee falsely claimed he played an important part in the student demonstration. The fact is, Douglas Wachter was forced to attend as a subpoenaed witness. He was not a leader of any demonstration. You will note that he is just finishing his testimony. Yet this shot shows him in the hallway with the students awaiting admission to the hearings. Now remember, the committee hearings were supposed to be public, so a lot of people came to attend simply as spectators. They queued up outside the hearing room, waiting to be admitted. They had assumed admission would be on a first-come, first-served basis, but the committee wasn't playing it that way. People bearing passes issued by the committee to carefully selected groups were admitted by the side door, and the overwhelming majority of the seats were occupied by these pass-carrying friends of the committee. On the first morning, they did admit about 75 people from the general public, but this was the most ever. The committee's narrator says, quote, "The committee issued 100 passes." What he does not say is that on most passes it said, admit 3, 4, 5, or 6. It was this policy of stacking the committee hearing with friends of the committee which produced a deep sense of indignation and frustration in the students who had waited outside the door so long. Here's Archie Brown again. The original film cast him in the role of villain, and Brown is giving a good performance. Like the committee, he is reaching for newspaper headlines. In this sequence, Brown is being evicted from the hearings on Thursday morning. To build up the effect, this has been falsely coupled with these shots of the eviction of a student on Friday morning. And also Merle Brodsky on Friday. A glaring example of how the film transposes scenes is shown in the reappearance of Douglas Wachter. Wachter was previously shown leaving the witness stand. Now he's just appearing on the stand and testifying at some length. Remember, Wachter was forced to be present because he was subpoenaed. Unlike Archie Brown, Wachter didn't behave badly and wasn't tossed out of the hearings. Why then does the film spend so much time with him? It is because he is an alleged communist and a college student. Because you see one alleged communist student and then many other students, the committee would have you lump them all together and believe that all of the demonstrating students were communists. This is known as guilt by association, the committee's favorite weapon in smearing all kinds of people. Let's listen now to the mild-mannered Douglas Wachter testifying.
It punishes individuals and groups for their political ideas and associations through public exposure and condemnation.
Now, I'm sorry. You are refusing to answer on the basis of the First Amendment. Is that correct?
I have objected to the question. It punishes individuals and groups for their political ideas and associations through public exposure and condemnation, often resulting in economic sanction. I cannot cooperate with the committee in answering any such questions. I feel I have an obligation as a citizen of this country to preserve the Constitution, and I do not feel I can do so in good conscience by allowing the House Un-American Activities Committee to inquire into my beliefs or associations.
Wachter is then ordered and directed to answer the question whether he is a Communist Party member. Here is his response.
I decline to answer that question on the grounds previously stated, and I also respectfully refuse to answer that question on the constitutional grounds that I cannot be forced to bear witness against myself.
Perhaps these crowd shots were designed to link Wachter to the demonstrating students. At noon on Thursday, a mass rally was sponsored by the Students for Civil Liberties at Union Square, about a mile away from the City Hall. A minister and 2 California assemblymen addressed this rally and denounced the House Committee on Un-American Activities as a threat to civil liberties. After the rally, the students marched back to the City Hall and began to picket outside the building under the direction of monitors wearing armbands. They carried signs critical of the committee. Here is Police Inspector Dan Shelley on duty outside the door of the hearing room on Thursday morning, waving back the students who were unable to gain admission. At the close of the Thursday morning session, and mainly while the committee was recessed, a group of subpoenaed witnesses engaged in a demonstration inside the hearing room. They chanted, "Open the door." This was followed by the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner and the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag, and then repeated chanting of, "Open the door." The connection between these subpoenaed witnesses and the students protesting the committee is never made clear. The subpoenaed witnesses, the stars of this show, didn't picket with the students, and the students were extremely careful to have nothing to do with the witnesses. Yet this cutting back and forth, these honest and accidental mistakes, to quote Chairman Walter again, would have you believe that there was a connection. The original film distorted the account of the demonstration in the hearing room in 3 ways. First of all, it concealed the fact that most of this time the committee wasn't even in session. Second, it hid the immediate reason for the demonstration. The fact was, some of the subpoenaed witnesses had presented a petition to the committee asking them to move to a larger room, or else admit people on a first-come, first-served basis. The committee refused to consider the petition. And third, students were justifiably angry over the seating policy, the fact that almost all of the seats were filled by people carrying the committee's white cards. Now remember, this demonstration occurred at the close of the Thursday morning session, and mainly while the committee was recessed. Although the way the film is pieced together, you'd think it happened Friday, just before the police hosing. It just wasn't that way at all. Now let's listen to the demonstration. Bear in mind that the committee is not now in session, and this demonstration, however noisy, is in no way interfering with the taking of testimony.
Open the door! Open the door! Open the door! Open the doors! What are you afraid of? Open the doors! Here comes the goose squad! This is Americanism! Watch this Americanism in action! Oh, watch this Americanism in action! Watch this Americanism!
Finally, after the 7 subpoenaed witnesses had been allowed to put on their disorderly act for the benefit of the TV cameramen and the newspapers, they were removed from the hearing room by police officers. They could have been removed much sooner, since police were on duty throughout the hearings. But it served the committee's purpose to allow the demonstration to be prolonged. In fact, both the committee and the demonstrators were bidding for headlines. Chairman Willis opens Thursday afternoon's hearing session with a request for order.
That these hearings have been conducted in a dignified fashion. The only urgent reason why the people, the door is not open, is this. In no courtroom in America are people allowed on the side aisle unless they order it. In no picture show or other public function are people allowed in the side aisle without being ordered. That is the only reason why this thing has been brought about. We were very patient this morning. We will continue to be patient but firm and decisive.